The winter of 1887 came down hard on the Wyoming Territory, flattening the prairie beneath a white silence that swallowed fences, trails, and the confidence of men who thought they knew the land. The wind cut like a blade, and the sky pressed low, a pewter lid over a world reduced to breath and endurance. That was the winter Clara Hensley walked into the life of Jonah Reed. Clara arrived at Reed's Crossing with nothing but a carpetbag, a wool shawl patched twice at the elbows, and a look that had learned to wade danger quickly. She'd come west chasing a promise that had dried up before she reached Cheyenne. The job at the boarding house was gone, the cousin who wrote the letter had moved on. All that remained was the road and a town with 2 muddy streets, a feed store, a saloon that leaned like a drunk, and a hotel whose windows were boarded against the cold. Jonah Reed didn't belong to the town so much as the town existed in the long shadow of his ranch. Folks called him quiet, not dumb quiet, but the kind that listens before it speaks. He'd been a drover once, and a soldier before that, and after the war he took a piece of land no one else wanted because the river ran mean in spring and vanished in August. Jonah learned the river's moods the way you learn a horse's, and after years of watching, he made the place work. On the day Clara stumbled into Reed's Crossing, Jonah had ridden in to buy salt and nails. He tethered his horse outside the feed store and stepped inside, stomping snow from his boots. That was when he heard her voice, low, careful, edged with the kind of tired that doesn't ask for pity. "I was told there might be work," she said to the storekeeper. "Anything. Cooking. Mending." The man shook his head. "Not this time of year." Jonah didn't look at her then. He paid for his goods, nodded once, and stepped back into the cold. But the sound of her voice followed him, and with it the memory of another winter, another person standing where hope had just cracked. He mounted up and turned his horse toward the road out of town. He rode 10 steps, then stopped. The wind carried the smell of snow and something else, resolve, maybe. He turned back. "You got a place to sleep?" he asked, keeping his voice level. She met his eyes. They were gray, steady, and a little older than the rest of her. "Not tonight," she said. "I can pay when I find work." Jonah nodded, like he'd expected that answer. "I got a ranch. Needs help. If you don't mind the cold." "I don't," she said, too quickly. Then she steadied herself. "I don't mind." The ride out was quiet. Clara perched behind Jonah, holding the cantle, her breath fogging against his coat. The land stretched wide and white, fences buried, cottonwoods bent under ice. When the ranch house came into view, it looked small against the sky, smoke lifting from the chimney like a promise kept. Inside, the house was warm, the air smelling of wood smoke and coffee. Jonah hung his coat and showed her the kitchen. "There's stew," he said. "You can eat." She did, carefully, like someone who knew hunger but hadn't let it own her. Jonah watched her from the doorway, then turned away to feed the dog and tend the stove. When he came back, she was staring into the fire, her face softening in its glow. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "There's work in the morning." She smiled, small but real. "I can cook. I can clean. I can help with the animals." "We'll see," he said, not unkindly. As the night wore on, the wind rose. It worried the house, testing the seams. Jonah checked the shutters, then banked the fire. He stood there a moment, the quiet pressing in, aware of the extra presence in the house like a new heartbeat. She cleared her throat. "Where should I?" She hesitated, then asked it straight. "Where should I sleep?" Jonah looked at the single bedroom down the hall, the narrow bed with its iron frame. He thought of the lean-to in the back, drafty and unforgiving. He thought of the storm, how it would sharpen by dawn. He went to the bedroom, pulled back the blanket, and said, "Right here." She didn't misunderstand him. She studied his face, searching for something that wasn't there. "I don't want to." You'll sleep, he said. I'll take the chair. She stood very still. Then she nodded. All right. That night, Clara lay awake listening to the house breathe. Jonah sat in the chair by the hearth, hat pulled low, eyes half closed. The storm raged, but inside there was a fragile peace. Somewhere between the crackle of the fire and the sound of another human breathing nearby, Clara slept. Morning came pale and cold. Clara rose early, careful not to wake Jonah. She found flour and lard and set to work, hands remembering old rhythms. By the time Jonah woke, the smell of biscuits filled the house. Days fell into a pattern. Clara learned the ranch the way you learn a language, slowly at first, then with confidence. She fed chickens, mended harness, learned which cows kicked and which nuzzled. Jonah showed her how to split wood without wasting strength, how to read the sky. They spoke little, but when they did, it mattered. The town noticed. Folks talked, because folks always do. Some said Jonah had gone soft. Others said he'd found himself a wife without the trouble of asking. Jonah didn't answer any of it. Clara held her head high and worked. Winter deepened. Snow piled against the fence lines. One afternoon, Jonah came in with blood on his sleeve, a deep gash from a slipped blade. Clara cleaned it, her hands steady, her mouth set. When she was done, she wrapped it tight and met his eyes. You don't get to break, she said. Not without telling me first. He huffed a laugh. It surprised them both. In January, the river rose under ice and tore out a section of fence. Jonah went out at dawn to fix it and didn't come back by noon. Clara waited, then pulled on her coat and went after him. She found him knee-deep in freezing water, wrestling a post, his face gray. You fool, she said, grabbing his arm. Together, they got him back to the house. He shivered violently as she stripped wet clothes and shoved him toward the fire. You'll die if you don't warm, she said, voice sharp with fear. He didn't argue. He let her tend him, the way he'd let her sleep in his bed that first night, not as a claim, but as a trust. When the fever broke, they sat together by the fire, exhaustion making them honest. I don't know how long I can stay, Clara said softly. When spring comes. Jonah stared into the flames. I won't keep you. I know. Silence settled. Then she reached out and took his hand. It was rough and warm and real. Spring came late and muddy. The snow receded, revealing fences to mend and fields to ready. A stranger rode in one afternoon. A land agent with papers and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He talked of deeds and debts, of a claim Jonah had overlooked years ago. You've got 30 days, the agent said. That night, Jonah paced. Clara listened, then said, We'll fight. They did. They rode to town, dug through records, found a surveyor who remembered the old markers. Clara spoke where Jonah would have stayed silent, her words sharp and sure. In the end, the claim fell apart. When they rode home, the sky was wide and blue, the land green with promise. That evening, Clara stood in the doorway of the bedroom. Where should I sleep? She asked again, a smile playing at her mouth. Jonah pulled back the blanket. Right here, he said, and this time, he meant not just the bed, but the place beside him in the life they were building. Outside, the prairie breathed. Inside, the fire burned steady. And the winter that had brought them together loosened its grip at last.